You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Wow, greetings everyone, beloved Pan-Africans and Pan-Africanists and Africans worldwide. We are live on the Pan-African Daily TV with Professor James Small, like I promised yesterday. And I know a lot of you are going to be jumping in because you wanted to, first of all, peep in. Is she going to be alone, or she's going to bring our professor in? I'm so happy and thankful that Professor was able to connect to share this wonderful moment with us after a while now. So if you are connecting and joining, please make sure you begin to drop me your notifications in the chat so I can see where you're watching us from and what channel you're watching us. Are you watching us through Facebook or you're watching us through YouTube? It's very important, like I said, because we're on the continent now. A lot of our destinations are not being connected, and Facebook keeps giving the excuses. And so we need to know what source or which outsource you are watching is from, so we can be able to work on the order, output. So Linda, thank you. You say you're watching us from the US, and I think you're watching us on YouTube. Thank you very much, because I see the signal. Professor is right here to hold a conversation about updates around Africa and in the diaspora as well. And the current issue that is happening now is the elections, or the outcome or the verdict of the elections in South Africa, which ANC built or is building what they government between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance of Mr. Steinhuisen John. So Africans have been very, very disgruntled. Until today, they are saying it's not going to work. They don't understand this kind of coalition. It could have been a coalition between ANC and also MK of Excellency Jacob Zuma, or the possibility of EFF would have been on board in that coalition. So South Africans and Africans are absolutely against why the ANC had to go into this coalition. But we also read this morning on the platform of Honorable Julius Malema, or EFF, and they are throwing a lot of accusations on the Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, and saying they're going to sue for funds mishandling and all that, or corruptions as well. So this is what is actually breaking. Of course, it's breaking everywhere on the continent, where we are also experiencing some kind of conflicts, but not really something that is new. But what is new, we already shared it on the Pan-African Daily, like Senegal's president, newly elected president, is really making some powerful moves, like, Ibrahima Traoré. And these two guys and the other young leaders is what we already talked about as the Agenda 2063 of the African people, from the African Union, that we begin to see this kind of new leadership that is coming back to order. So thank you so very much, Abdul Ali Mohammed. You said you're watching us, I think, from YouTube, I can see. Channel M. Jallo, watching from Sierra Leone via Facebook. Thank you so very much. I'm watching from the United States of America. Okay, that's okay. Revolution 2 said, Uhuru Pan African family watching from Columbus. Thank you very much. And Ma Keru, blessings from the USA, from USA Chicago. Thank you, Comrade Oliver Kapamba, watching via Facebook from the Zambia. That's already okay. Greetings to you, Comrade. David Bertrand is saying, good evening, Dr. Tata, Professor James Small, listening. Public, I'm watching from the UK on Facebook. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please make sure you're inviting all our listeners today, because when Professor James is on here, please, you better pay attention and you take your books and your notes, right? Because there's a lot you will be you want to judge down, and there's a lot you want to throw in for questions, because he's actually the right person to answer. Um, oh, comrade, you're watching from the UK, Kapamba. Woo, okay, comrade. So we are neighbors, of course. UK is closer. Thank you, Furgan Ali, Black Power. Thank you so very much. And like, yes, I mean, Prof is here. Prof is gonna chew about 3 hours lectures. I know I'm grabbing it already. I'm grabbing it because I mean,
Three
that's a
hours,
lot. That's a
Susan.
lot, Professor. I'm sorry. I just like I only said I only said 3 hours. I didn't say 3 hours. Okay, Professor. Good evening.
Good
Prof,
evening.
how are we? How are we doing in the diaspora, my professor?
Suffering from imperialism, fascism, white supremacy, and backwards Negroes unconsciousness.
Oh, goodness. So we have greetings, Dr. Susan Tata. Good evening, Professor James Small, Nkuleleku Mfakani, here from Cape Town, South Africa, chairperson of the Africa Hidden Voices. Looking forward to an enlightening conversation. Okay, thank you so very much. David Wine is watching us, saluting us from where, Dave? I know, but you just type it here. Prof, you said you're suffering from imperialism, from white supremacy, from manipulations, from confusionists, from everything you want to think. Your sister is right here, Professor Baina Bello. You know, he's the one that
Hi,
would
Sister
be,
Baina.
Sister Baina is right here. Okay, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you very much. And watching from YouTube and YouTube as well. So our YouTube channel is intact, as I can see, even though most people are saying they don't get notifications from us again. So we're working on it. In a worst case, you're gonna get Dr. Susan Tata YouTube come up to back up that all the pages. Okay, so everything is fine. Prof, what have you been doing today or in a couple of days?
Um, Working, trying to find ways to enlighten African peoples, trying to find out why I thought I knew, and then I realized I didn't know. Why are we so comfortable with being slaves to the European culture? We are
Go
so
ahead, Prof.
comfortable to being slave to European religion. We are so comfortable to being slave to European concept of beauty aesthetic or handsome aesthetic that we are just enjoying our slavery no matter how much the bulk of our people are suffering. And the ones, the Black elite, the Black politician, the Black billionaires, millionaires, middle class, all across the African world, diaspora, and at home, seem to be into a psycho-spiritual partnership with those who murdered our ancestors and genocided our ancestors 4th century and feel no guilt about it. Matter of fact, they tried to rationalize it like Ramaphosa did by saying, I don't want a Black government in South Africa. South Africa is multiracial. Is he saying that Black people can't govern on behalf of non-Black people? That's silliness, childish, programmed behavior. We do not see the Jewish people of the world showing any love for Nazis or Nazism. And anyone that dared to try to make any kind of innuendo as such would be tracked down, beat down, and driven out of town by the supporters of Jewish people. And yet, the genocide that took place not on the continent of Africa, we'll set that aside with the billions killed over the centuries. Just the genocide that took place in South Africa during the period called apartheid should be enough for Blacks never to trust anyone with governing them except them ever again. But maybe Ramaphosa saying that we have gotten to be so white that if we get control of our government, we'll act just like the descendants of the Boers and of the Dutch and of the British, and that we will be as evil as them because we have adopted their attitudes, their belief, and their ways. Maybe that's what he's saying, and I don't understand it. So I'm just trying, the kids over here have a way of saying, I'm just saying we need to become real, because the poverty in South Africa, like the poverty in New York, is not going to go away because we are trying to please the opposition and prove to them that we have a humanity that the opposition couldn't ever imagine for themselves. But that's just one thing. But we have other things to do. And I think Baina Bello said it yesterday, that we are not to cry too much. I disagree a little bit. Baina, crying is good if you're crying for the right reason. It stimulates certain things. But I do agree fully that we need to build the opposition. We need to do, if ESS and Malema is who they say they are, if they're who they say they are, prove it by getting on the ground, getting in the trenches with the grassroots people and the impoverished people, which is 90% of South Africa in terms of the people who are to some degree impoverished and definitely grassroots, and build an organization that will show them that the government will service them and their needs. Just critiquing the other side, you must critique them because you must explain them to the people. But in your critique, you must show the people how to build for themselves an organizational construct that can control the bulk of the capital that's coming from the people in South Africa. Because the bulk of the people in South Africa, their monies is being used to run a government that's not servicing them. The government is still trying to service the people who need no government services other than control of Black people. The primary reason that ANC was even given, and I'm saying given because they didn't take it, because we must remember the slaughter of the PAC leadership, which ANC was complicit with America, Israel, and the apartheid government of South Africa, leading up to presidents getting out of prison. And it was never intended that the ANC should do anything except ask for act as a policeman for continued economic apartheid in South Africa. And that's what we have. We have economic apartheid. You say you fight a revolution. You say you won. And not one penny of the wealth of your nation is returned to the people of the nation. You say you won. 90% of the best farmland is in the hands of the people you defeated. You say you won. Much of South Africa are made up of small, all-white towns run politically by all-white people that many towns Black people can't be in after the sun goes down, and we don't have a discussion about it. We don't even talk about it. So I think we must first start by telling the truth of what has occurred in South Africa from its independence, quote unquote, till now. Because I don't understand how you get independence of your nation without getting control of any of the resources of the nation to use to build the institutions for the people of the nation. And then you, in your party politics, begin to create an anti-African sentiment among your people, saying you must blame your African brothers and sisters who have immigrated from other states for your economic woes, when you know damn well that's not what's causing the economic problems in South Africa. And you openly turned our people against one another, and you call yourself a government. You're nothing more than a police force that is the keeper for the continued economic apartheid of South Africa. And from that base of South Africa's wealth, you're controlling the economy of many other countries. You go to Ghana, the main telephone companies, the major shopping malls are all owned by the apartheid monies of South Africa and in other countries as well. So you're still facilitating the economic tentacles of apartheid South Africa, controlling the economy of Africa itself, with its partner, British, America, Israel, France, and the others. So there's a lot of things to be discussed, not just the election and looking at President Ramaphosa or his new vice president, we don't know who he is, or even Brother Malema and his party. They're just playing the game that the apartheid and their Western supporters put in place for them to play. Neither one have seriously shown, except for ESS, that they can seriously build at the grassroots level. But they have to build more than sentiment towards the enemy. They must begin to build some institutional construct at the local level that can service people, whether the enemy service them or not. I haven't seen that in any significant way. So we've got to be more than a policeman for apartheid. And that's what the government of South Africa has been for the most part since its so-called independence. I know that doesn't sound nice and kind, but I learned that the truth will really, as much of it as you can understand, help you construct your way out of your difficulty. But if you rather have a lie, so that to the point that we are so blind that we don't even see African aesthetics as beautiful anymore, and we say we're free. We don't see our ancestors as having any worth, because we sashay every Sunday or Saturday into the spiritual or religious institution of our genociders and pray to the gods they prayed to when they were killing us, while we are still symbolically spitting on the grave of our ancestors and trying to say we have an identity. That's not an identity. That is acknowledging your loss of identity, which needs to be reclaimed. Because without an identity, you don't know for whom you're even fighting or why. So I don't know what else I can say, Mrs. Dr. Tata, except the truth is the truth. It shows itself whether I say a word or not. We just have to look at what's going on. Right now, it's just we are talking about South Africa. But you can find virtually the same thing going on in every African nation. The only place I see any redemption is in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and some now supposedly coming out of Senegal. That's the only place I see any redemption. Tanzania, after the loss of the great president, I'm waiting to still see what direction they're really going in. But it still appears to me we have not figured out how to stop just being policemen for imperialism, colonialism, fascism, and apartheid. We have not figured out how to stop talking about freedom while we desecrate our ancestors in every shape, form, and language, and visual aesthetics, and culture, and our music, and our religion, and our philosophies. We spit on the face. We literally urinate in the face of our ancestors and dare to walk around pouring libation as a symbolic gesture on occasion. It's an insult, and they will never let us be free. We will never know freedom until we turn back to our ancestors and ask them which way forward, given what was done to you. And if you don't do that, stop playing African. Living on the continent don't make you African, because there's millions of white people living on the continent of Africa, and hundreds of thousands born there and claim that as their home. And they don't give a damn about the indigenous genetic African, but they call themselves African, and all legal construct in the world say they are. So don't throw the labels around. I'm born on the continent of Africa. That makes me African. No, it doesn't. Stop playing. Turn to being the representative of your ancestors. That is the only thing that makes you African. If you do not become the representative of your ancestors, stop claiming the label African, because you're not an African. And I know that me, I'm an old man, so I've struggled for many years to get there, but that's the struggle. Because how are we going to say we claiming this for whom? A bunch of white people in blackface, brownface, with our long hair and our attachments and our making sure we got our suits to match the white corporate structure in Europe and America when we go to affairs, or making sure we bought the most expensive car the Europeans can make to prove that we have some status while our neighbor is starving. Or let's stop playing. So it's hard to just talk about South Africa, because it isn't what just occurred in South Africa has occurred all over the continent in one form or another. And it all comes back to, do you know your history? I tell you, history will erase the mystery. That's not just a cliche. Do you know and respect your ancestors? Then you should be their representative to the world. And what happened to them should be the things that instruct and inform you of what you must do next. If you're not there, I don't know, this discussion just becomes rather moot to me. And I don't want to play the silly game of ideology and philosophy and religion and the bull that we pass as resistance conversation. So for those organizations who feel that what Ramaphosa and his organization ANC has done in their alliance with the Democratic Alliance, the Democratic Alliance is the same Nazi party that ran apartheid. If you can rationalize being with them, but you couldn't rationalize being with your brothers, even the IFP have behaved terribly in South African politics. You have not made a clear statement in all these years of what South Africa, what it is to be a South African, because you've been too busy trying to make sure you do not offend your murderer and your genocider, who you forgave for all of their crime in an artificial sham courtroom ran by a bishop who didn't have a clue about African spirituality, for the behest of the white folks who wanted to make sure no European South African suffered for the crime of genocide committed against the South African people. So you had yourself some sham court where if you testify that you've murdered me, you can walk free. And the world is supposed to applaud you. And of course, the European world did applaud you. Nowhere in the history of the world have anything that's asinine and stupid was ever done by a people who had been so aggrieved in genocide by another people. and you want me to feel proud of that behavior. That's silly. Criminals are to meet what comes to criminals, especially when their criminality was genocide against another people who offered them nothing but hospitality. So here we are now with a new election in South Africa, and people running around with a flag and no wealth to support themselves, and can't even control the land of their nation except for the urban ghettos and the few urban modernity that the enemy left to them to govern on their behalf. And you want me to make logic out of this foolishness? I'm not even going there. So that's what I had to say, Sister Susan. And I hope people listen deep enough that they understand what I'm saying. Otherwise, we'll be here another 100 years having the same silly conversation about the same subject.
I stay in the back in the stage because I think the connections are actually tripping. If both of us will be on stage live, when I'm listening to you, you can see you sometimes you're like freezing. Thank you very much, Professor. It can't be said enough. It can actually be spoken, be repeated. It has been the same going on and on, the same kind of game. Now, the question I really just want to address clearly is something that all the family watching me right here knows exactly, that this is not working, it will never work. It's very simple. Does Western democracy works in Africa? During ancient Africa, we had another kind of leadership on how to manage our resources and our people. And after the modern system came through the invaders, right? Now we are stuck in a system where Africans are just like turning in a circle. They don't know, like you said, they don't know their history. Does it really work, Professor? Does modern
No,
democracy works for Africa?
first of all, there is no such thing as modern democracy. Democracy in the West is a lie. Most Western states are oligarchs that's run in a most fascist manner against the working class people. Um, they have elections, but they control all parties in the election. The oligarchs control the parties. Doesn't matter who win the election, the oligarchs, the banks, the corporate structures, corporate boardrooms remain the same. Their international and national interests and control remain the same. The only thing that differs is the management style of the new political party that comes in office. And we've adopted that same stupidity in Africa, that it doesn't matter. One government comes in and they throw out all of the good work of the government before and start from scratch. And I watched this foolishness over and over and over. It makes no sense. They talk about party politics, yet the same oligarchical wealth structure that has been built to manage Africa on the part of the Indian and the Lebanese and the African collaborators, the Indian and the Lebanese who were brought in primarily by the British to manage colonialism for them. When the British left physically, they left their managers in place. So you go to many countries on the East Coast and in the West Coast, and you see this large number of Lebanese and Indian merchants and business class. You said, when did they come here? Where did they come from? They were part of the colonial system that was left in place. Same thing in South Africa and other countries in Kenya and Tanzania and Ghana. Okay. And we've watched this and not questioned it because we've got caught up in some foolishness. Though they kind of look like us, they're brown. They were brown when the colonialists armies were there, and they did not side with us. They were on the side of the colonialists who brought them in to help manage us. And now these people manage our economy and use that money to manipulate our elections, to determine who get elected in the sham, false Western democratic construct. You know, that says we will form 2 or 3 gangs. We will call the gangs political parties, and we'll let each of you get a turn at robbing your people as long as you keep managing your raw material exiting from the country in our best interests. That's all that's going on. I'm not going to make it complicated. It's not complicated. Everybody knows what's going on. You can have all this gold and all this diamond and all this bauxite and all this manganese and all this coltan and all this cobalt, and your kids walking around raggedy as hell, broke and impoverished, and gotta use the last penny of the money to pay to go on a death ride through Libya, across the Mediterranean and Europe, to be treated like a slave in less than minimum wage, to try to make a few dollars to feel that they've arrived at freedom. How ridiculous does that sound? And we acting like this is the normal. This is normal. Who and what makes it normal? What makes it normal is these sham democracies all over Africa, pretending to govern the people and the resources of the people. They're governing them, but they're governing them for the same colonialists, fascists, imperialists that had murdered millions of us for centuries. And because we won't respect our ancestors enough to look back and see what their experiences were with these people, we are not able to go forward in the best interests of our people. Because you cannot establish your people's interests without establishing their genesis. And you can't establish the genesis without reckoning with the experience of your ancestors. Now, you want some slick political term and ideological bull term, go get it from somebody else. I'm telling you straight up, straight ahead truth. Stop lying to yourself. If you're going to be an African, then become your ancestors' character by knowing their history and their experience. What was done to them will tell you what you must do next. If that's not what's informing you on what to do next, you're just a slave of somebody else's mind. I'm a slave only of my ancestors and my gods. And I enjoy being the slave of my ancestors and my God. Because anything else gives us the condition that we're here discussing now. As simple as that. And I hope that's simple. People will say, oh, but then we're still hungry. We still don't have jobs. Well, you will remain hungry and you will remain without jobs, and you will remain abandoning your motherland to go to the land of the others, to be treated like garbage and like trash. Nobody knows that story better than those of us who've been in their house for 500 years. We know the Europeans better than you will ever learn them. So you can take us for granted if you want to, because we don't speak with the right accent. And so you can play games. But we, the Africans that's been in the diaspora for 500 plus years, we know the institutions you're trying to adopt. We can tell you it doesn't work. We've got 500 years experience. We know the people who created those institutions. We can tell you they're not going to operate in your best interest. We've got 500 years experience. You don't want to respect this experience because my accent isn't right? Then you will suffer until you return to your ancestors as a way of knowing who you are. Return to your ancestors' history and experience as a way of knowing what to do now. And that is not complicated. You don't need no dissertation to figure out what I just said.
No.
So
Professor, I like
mustacha.
what you said. Yes, I like what you said. And this is very pertinent. And I think Africans are actually picking up on this. When you said, if you do not respect the experiences that we have living in this system, people, we know who they are. We've worked with them. We know them in and out. Just because I have some kind of accent, then you will suffer. I mean, I don't know how we can paraphrase this or break it down. I think I need a Swahili translator to actually bring it down so that we can make some sense out of it. African spirituality, Professor, how is it helpful to pave a right way in the right directions that Africans can handle and take their own freedom into their hands, just like their ancestors did? I would really love you, Prof, to actually articulate on this. African spirituality is the way forward. And what is African spirituality in the first place? Because the moment we say spirituality, people mix it up a lot.
Yeah,
Professor,
they're thinking. They
you
think
have
we're.
been an imam, you have been a theologian, you have been everything. Tell us.
Excuse me. Um, the big thing is that we have misunderstood what culture is. If we get culture straight, we can find our way back to understanding our spiritual foundation. And culture is not dancing,
Mm,
culture is not singing, culture is not drumming,
thank you.
culture is not wearing a certain printed cloth. You know, culture is not even speaking a certain language. Though all of those things, excuse me, all of those things together are tools of culture. At the foundation of culture is the spiritual understanding of our ancestors about how to live in the universe in a harmonious and balanced manner through gaining a knowledge of the cosmology and the ecology that we're a part of. Now, let me say that again, because people like to jump to religion. Africans never had a religion. No one can show me a single African state that had a religion before the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims came. And all of them came and slaughtered us and took our land. All of them. Raped our women, plundered our home, burnt our village for centuries after centuries into the thousands of years. And we were forced to accept their religion and become the slave of their way of life, none of which has helped us get out of this poverty and genocide that we've been into for the last hundreds of years. So if all these fine gods we've adopted from our enemies, will be as powerful as they are, have not allowed us any reprieve. Thousands of years of getting our butts kicked all over our continent in one Christian crusade or Christian war or Muslim jihad after the other. And none of their gods have helped us to freedom. But all the churches and the synagogues and the mosques we have across Africa, you would think we just have to clap our hands and freedom would be there. Clap our hands and the economic wherewithal would be there. Clap our hands and the good hospital to help our people who are sick would be there. So don't tell me anything about your religion, anything about the God you've adopted from our murderers. Don't want to hear none of it. You can't rationalize any of it. History has already proven them to be what they are. Now let's look at what they came and started. What did they come and burn to the ground? When they burned the sacred groves of the people of the Igbo community? What were they destroying? When they sacked the temples of Ila Ife, when they sacked the temples of Kumasi, when they burnt the communities and slaughtered them with their armies, the Dutch and the Danes and the Brandenburg along the coast of Ghana, what did they destroy? The Portuguese, when they came into Congo and Angola, what did they destroy? What did they destabilize? And the only thing that has given us the strength to survive as long as we have survived is not the religions, because that stuff is proven irreworkable. The thing that has given us the strength has been our ancestral spirits in our bodies, our ancestors' genes that make us up, the little fragments of our ancestors' thoughts that we can hold on to. That, using our languages and our cultural rhythms that come from our drums and our speaking, has allowed us to survive. And yet we won't return back to the foundation of that to rebuild our total healthy human spiritual self so that we can combat the robber barons who are loading our raw materials on boats and planes every day, carting it out of Africa, building their beautiful Paris, building their New York and their Denver and their Los Angeles and their London and their Antwerp with our wealth. While we're sitting on a curb trying to sell a Chinese knockoff spark plug cord in the middle of rush hour traffic to make enough to eat. Do you see the crime that has been committed against us and is being committed every day by the fantasy and the fallacy of a democracy that don't even work in America? That's why you will find America, just the national government of America have 23, listen to me now, they have 23 intelligence networks. You think of CIA, that's the cover network. They got 23 intelligence networks, most of them spying on their own people. All right? New York City, got New York City Police Department, New York City Transit Police, New York City Parks Police, New York City Sanitation Police, New York City, you name it. They've got about 10 police organizations armed to the teeth, trained in military fashion that police the residents of New York City. And that's true across the country. You think this is a democracy? Spit on the sidewalk the wrong way and see which way the bullet comes, especially if you're Black. But you want to buy into the fantasy they give you in the music and the movies? And you think that's reality? Read the biography of Miss Fannie Lou Hamer down in Mississippi. Let her tell you about the abuse she suffered in jail and the rape she suffered in the jail. Read the stories of Black America. Read the genocide against them. See how many of us are killed unarmed by the American police every year. You think Jay-Z represents us? I got nothing against Jay-Z. He's a musician. He's a beautiful man. He's got a beautiful wife who's very talented. But that's not who represents us. Malcolm X represents us. Martin Luther King represents us. They both died at 39 years old, slaughtered by assassins sent by this government to stop them from partnering us with Africa. And you still don't get it? So back to South Africa. Why Ramaphosa would make the decision when he could have just as well allied himself with ESS or IFP? Why would he make the decision to go with GA? You know, what kind of mind construct he had. Now, maybe he's made some deals we don't know about. Maybe the Democratic Alliance pro-apartheid people is going to give some of the wealth of the mines of South Africa legally and legitimately over to the government of South Africa to now take care of the poverty and the infrastructure necessary, building an institutional hospital and school building. School teachers in South Africa, they don't make enough money to pay the bus fare back home and from school every day. I have godchildren over there who I work with all the time and help financially in many ways. They would come over here with a teacher's degree, with all this democracy. And America won't even respect the degrees from our university. That's what they need to be negotiating. Yet any of our students from an African university can outdo any student in an American university academically, but they will not even recognize our degree. And our governments sit on their hand and pretend that that is okay and want us to accept them as legitimate architects of a democracy that's going to save us without any access to the instrument that produce wealth in a society, to create industry in a society, to employ the people of that society, and creating institutions in that society that teach the technology necessary to deal. How many institutions in South Africa teach geology, mining, petroleum, and the kinds of things that you need to run the wealth of your nation? Any African nation. You teaching me some Western liberal arts crap that they don't even use in the West, and then wonder why I'm unemployed or unemployable. So, Mr. Ramaphosa and your ANC government, I'm still angry for the death of Chris Hani. You know, you didn't take responsibility for murdering your own. I'm still angry for the way you slaughtered the PAC leading up to Nelson coming out of prison, so the PAC wouldn't be in opposition to the NAC in partnership with American CIA, Israel Mossad, and others. Yes, I am still angry with you for that. So the world needs to know, study your history, African world. Study your history, erase the mystery. How you can say this person is my enemy, this is my colonizer, this is my imperialist, but then he gives you the story, right, that you should live by. He gives you the narratives that you should make your decision on your next move with. Does that make any logical sense in anybody's culture? It doesn't. Only my ancestors' experience can inform me of what I've got to do next. Let me say that loud and clear for everybody to hear me. Because when we say ancestors, everybody kind of Well, everybody in the Bible is dead, in case nobody gave you the 411. Every single person mentioned in your Bible is ancestors. Every single person mentioned in your Quran is ancestors. Every single person mentioned in your Old Testament of Torah is ancestors. So when I talk about my African ancestors, stop being squeamish, silly people. Everything you think you know you've been learning from dead people, represented to you by white people or European people who have been carrying out genocide against you for centuries. Now, does it sound logical that that's how you should make your decision? If you understand that, then you will understand me clearly. I am instructed and informed by the experiences of my ancestors on what I have to do next. That is simple. Simple. Miss Susan, you're looking kind of sad. What's the matter? Huh?
I am not. And that it just keeps boring into the old ones that we, of course, I honestly am not, because when I listen to what Professor Baida said, and I'm learning so much from you, of course, Professor said there's nothing like they did this to us, they defeated us, or they are doing this, or South Africa is going back to appetite, or to appetite, the way they call it. And there's nothing that is going to happen. We need to refocus and choose wisely, exactly like you said. It's not enough to just go around, mobilize people and speak. And I like what you said, Prof, when you said, if you mean what you are saying, then you gotta act right. If you mean it, because we have seen the same in the same color, betray, sell out, disrespect, like ignorantly or intentionally. So, Prof, I'm not sad. I am just listening and beginning to figure out like what is the African child, what is the African that is watching you on the content and in the diaspora actually thinking right now when you're breaking out this truth. That's what is going on in my head. Like, I hope everybody is getting this message clear that I don't need to repeat myself, that they don't need to.
Mhm.
I hope everyone understands Professor James Small. That's just what I'm reminiscing on.
Okay, there's one other thing that I'd like to push. No matter where you are in the world or what people you are, there's some fundamental things. And the fundamental is we must be able to supply our people and ourselves food, clothing, shelter, safety. No matter who you are in the world, those four things is absolutely essential as motivators for what you do and how you do it. The application of food or the acquisition, food, clothing, safety, and security. And in that food, clothing, safety, and security, there's the housing, which would be the fifth. How do we supply this? It means you must find wealth somewhere that can be extracted from something that could be used in some kind of medium of exchange in order for you to buy the materials necessary to afford you food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. Right? And that's it. That's bottom line. I mean, like this, that has to be the foundational motivator. But what is the information that gives that motivation? The experiences of those who created you out of their womb. The experiences of those who created you out of their womb. You are their representative to the world. You are their next step in the world. Anyone that wants to say, I'm someone and I belong to this family of people must then be responsible to the elements of that family that came before them. How can we not see this so clearly that this is in the forefront of our thinking? You know, if I'm going to die for something, I must know what the something is. And I have to determine through experience and history the worthiness of the thing I'm dying for. So, in order to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security, we must get
Professor, I
control.
think I might still even try to understand people in the diaspora when we're talking about how we respect our elders or our ancestors.
Mhm.
Currently on the continent, like a daughter of the continent, what I realize or what we keep observing is in most families, there's a lot of serious damages because of the refusal to follow the traditions in the villages. I want to tell
Mhm.
you, this is crazy. Starting, I mean, like I talk to the mothers and the fathers every day. When they brought this so-called men of God or some of this kind of crazy church and people just waking up and calling themselves, most of them went into local families and burned the traditional stuff of their fathers and mothers that transcended by saying you don't have to keep these things. But I tell you, Professor, all of them always have to return to the stool of their ancestors to get things right. That's why I said I could even, for whatever reason, understand the diaspora. I can have understanding for our people in the diaspora. But I'm talking about a day to day issue that is currently going on the continent because Africans have totally turned away from their traditions. They don't respect their ancestral shrines no more. They don't pay for libation. Even the words of the ancestors that left, they don't respect it, particularly when they so-called joined this kind of, I don't know how to even describe this kind of circles. So, but the truth is, at the end of the day, like you said, our ancestors live with us. They always demand what they are out for. And so you see, some of this kind of crazy poverty mindset is the lack of spirituality. The poverty that you keep working your money and putting into something that drains your energy, that kind of losses business, as we call it. You don't get, it's not a business that is built on spirituality of you win, I win. I am because you are. And so if we don't function together, we both lose. That's African Ubuntu-ness. But this type is the one that even the poorest of the poorest keeps sowing into. And it's not more done with the white faces. It's unfortunate to say it. It has been done now by the Africans that think that the European have taught them a way of making money through churches and religions and all this kind of circus. Yeah. And so they begin to look at it as a source of wealth. That's why I'm just saying this to come back to the point where you say, to be able to get the basics, we need to be able to at least have a source of wealth. But if we look back into ancient Africa, even me as a village child growing up in the village, without all the setups that we were in, we were able to live from our small farms. My father was a cattle rearer, and we were able, and they had to sponsor us all. We did not get any developmental aid coming from anywhere, but the villagers trusted in their capacity to eat from what their ancestors had left. And they didn't have to beg. And up to today, they're the richest people that own land and own properties in the village without having any collateral with any bank. And no so-called civilized generation and the so-called civilized that are migrating to look for greener pastures ever would beat such forefathers and foreparents till today. But they did the same business, Prof. They took market to farm. They know how to calculate their cost. They know how to feed their cattle in a healthy way without having attended school to know how to write their names. So it is not really about like what you're saying. It's simple common sense. How does it happen that we begin to always look at them as the primitives? Because an educational system that came taught you that your parents that you grew up in the village, you were less privileged because they could not read their names and write. But they did everything from market strategies to logistics to putting a price on their crops to organizing the community without any person who knows how to spell their names. And when they brought this religion, they changed all their names from their original names, as we know. So how can Africans not being able to just figure out how did our parents, our forefathers and mothers, how did they succeed even just to drive and beat out the colonizers? Do you look at this generation that is infiltrated with fear, with all the manipulations that they will not be the ones to sell Africa, Professor? Professor James, are you sleeping?
No, no, no.
I know
I'm
you're
listening
here.
because your
I'm
explanation
just joking. I was just bringing you back.
is so clear. You know, if we look into our schools and every country in Africa that we say is free, we're still using the colonial curriculum. We're still using the colonial um, books. We're still teaching colonial languages as primary language to be learned. Wouldn't it be something if every African nation, since you have the two of the largest languages in the continent, is the Swahili and the Yoruba, and I think you have one more. Why aren't those being the primary language taught in every school from the north to the southeast to the west? Why are we still making French? Now we're making Chinese Mandarin mandatory in so many of our schools. They say, oh, so we can trade with them. The average child going to school, 99.9% will not be in any kind of trade with China. So this is about mental colonialism, mental imperialism. Okay? And so we have to, it comes back again to the most fundamental. We can talk all the politics and the voting and all that. Those people voted the way they did in South Africa. They voted for the DA, the degree to which they voted for them. They voted for Ramaphosa, despite everybody knowing how corrupt the ANC had been and how abusive and how failure it has been as a government. The people voted for them because the people's minds is in the exact same place as Ramaphosa and his people and the DA. They still think that you can define yourself with quality if you ally yourself with the European imperialist murder and fascist that has been destroying you. They think that alliance gives you value. Where does that come from? That aligning yourself with your enemy, that aligning yourself with someone who has an institution that is directly opposed to everything that your indigenous institution is about, gives you value. And that's why they voted that. You know, most of them don't even know how to spell Ramaphosa. I don't mean that in a negative, I mean that in terms of politics. They don't know what Ramaphosa's basic policies are. But Ramaphosa represents conceptually an attitude that say we can be better off if we imitate the people who ran apartheid and who still run apartheid. South Africa, most of your farmland is in the hands of the white apartheid agents. South Africa, most of your towns are in the hands of white people. You may have these few big cities, but you only have a couple of big cities that you're managing for them. All of the major corporations in those cities belong to those same people, not to you. Stop playing. You can't even go into those towns except as workers, and you have to be shut down, locked down at sundown. You know? And so let's stop playing. Let's tell ourselves the truth about what is really going on in South Africa. Who owns the wealth in South Africa? How come the Rothschild and the Chase banks and the and all of the other great houses of European wealth who ran apartheid still owns all of the mineral wealth of South Africa? What freedom did you get? So let's start by fundamental truth. What is the situation financially and economically in South Africa that can assist any government with servicing the people's needs and facilitating the building of institutions for those people that would allow them to have a constant circle of employment and development for themselves and their future? That's true for any African nation. South Africa is only big because the white world is trying to figure out what they're going to do with their white people. We don't get the same attention put on elections in other African countries, where the elections may be even more significant. But South Africa has been made the place to watch, to see if white people will be moved out of power in the way Zimbabwe moved them out of power, while Zimbabwe is being punished for having moved the white people out of power. And the only people in Zimbabwe that gets assistance and aid from the West are those who are trying to put the white settler government children back in power. So why we lie? I'm not going to sit on this medium and lie to myself or lie to you about a fantasy freedom or fantasy democracy we don't have. You know? And so it comes back down to whose land? My land. And if my land, figure a way to take it back. If bloodshed isn't the best method to do it, then figure another way to do it. Negotiate it. Come up with some other design for getting it done. If white people are really serious about living in peace with black people, then share the wealth that you stole from black people. Then solve the problem overnight. But you want to be able to rob me, murder me, steal from me, abuse me for centuries And nothing is supposed to change in your status and your relationship to me, and me and you are supposed to have peace. Long as I'm impoverished, we can have peace. Long as I'm a beggar at your corporate door, we have peace. But you're not looking for a partnership with me to run South Africa. You're looking for a partnership with me to maintain the white status quo and controlling the economy of South Africa. That's what we are seeing. Let's not lie to ourselves about what we're seeing. This is not about racial equity. This is about wealth control and power control. If you have the wealth, you have the political power. And you can dance around the street all of you want with your banners and singing your brave song. It's meaningless if you have no control of the wealth that's necessary to run a modern technocratic metropolis like South Africa. So what do you want me to say? Well, South Africa is a multi-ethnic state. Most of the world, really, outside of the continent of Africa, a multi-ethnic state. The British don't apologize for having this supermajority white government with all the Africans living in Britain. The French don't apologize for having this super white French government with all of the Africans living in France, while they're robbing us in Africa every day, all day, carrying out genocide against us every day and sitting up there mouthing democracy. And we go, yeah, 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 daddy. Is your democracy we are imitating, even though we're suffering and you're living in Paris like you're in heaven. On my wealth, on my suffering. I'm not going to make none of that stuff sound nice. There's nothing nice about it. That's why we've got to support Burkina Faso. We've got to support Nigeria. We've got to support Mali. We've got to support what's going on in the movements in Senegal and other countries that are trying to move that way. Definitely support Zimbabwe. You can make all the fuss you want about our late, great Mugabe. But if it wasn't for Mugabe, Zimbabwe would be back in the hands of Ian Smith's children today. Now, that's what you want? You want to give the children of the murderers the right to run your country because you don't think you can run your own country? What are we talking about? Freedom or death shouldn't just be a cliche. Freedom should be very definitive. Freedom means I own and I control what's mine for the best interest of those who are mine and anyone else who wants to live with us justly and freely and fairly, no matter what their race. But if you're coming here thinking because you're from some other little washout, non-melanated group who have been murdering people for years, and based on your ability to murder and conquer, that you should be given some special class, then you're in the wrong place. Go back to Europe. And we ought to be clear about it. We're the only people that says, oh, it's all right, you murdered my mommy and raped her. Right now, I'm going to forgive you. Oh, that you killed my father and cut off his testicles and mutilated his body. That's in the past. I'm going to forgive you. How do you forgive people who don't even ask for forgiveness? And how do you forgive people who don't even ask for forgiveness, no even try to do any repentance for the crime they've committed? And you still trying to come up with some logical, rational sounding motif for forgiveness where you're now going to share the management of your world with those that made sure you got no rewards from the management of your world when they managed it. Talking about logic, you know. Anyway, I didn't mean to come with a rough spirit. I mean to come with a truthful spirit because we have too much suffering going on in a place where there should be absolutely no suffering. But you buy into a false democracy that's controlled in Africa by two criminal apparatus of Western so-called democracy called the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and Moody's, who then set the tone of your currency And they use these instruments to create debt slavery on the nation state that they've helped to establish. And then they decide that all the wealth you got in the ground, they're going to decide the value of your currency, which is based on some logic that they've created that makes no sense. And you're going to go along with that. If every African nation would come together in a meeting today, they only have that one thing on the agenda, that we're going to suspend every treaty and every contract that we have with anybody in the world until they sit down at a table and negotiate how we are going to, following some indigenous intellectual construct, create an African industrial sector that could support the people of Africa. Otherwise, shut the damn mines down. It's not doing you any good. Shut the oil well down. You're afraid you might have some people coming in with their guns and the bombs. They couldn't kill no more people than they're killing now. And you'll get to kill some of them. But, oh, that's so frightening. I will kill somebody. I can kill my brother because I'm mad because he said the wrong thing to my woman. But will I kill the man who murdered my mother, my father, and robbing me and keeping me in poverty? Oh no, that would be a bad thing. Oh, Baba James, how could you dare ask me to kill my enemy? How would you dare ask me to defend the integrity of myself? How would you dare ask me to defend the integrity of my ancestors, my land, my wealth? Close it down. Call a meeting. All treaties are now moot. Let them bring all the international court they want is their courts. Let them make all the international system they want. The only thing they can freeze is the money of the collaborators who have been stealing the money from our people. Anyway, let them freeze their money. We just keep our minds closed, go to our farms and mind our business. I guarantee you they'll come to that table much faster than you think. And they won't bring guns either. We keep talking about they have a nuclear bomb. Where are they going to drop it on themselves? You know, where are they going to drop it? We let people intimidate us. Everybody that's listening to this broadcast, we're going to be dead in 50, 60 years. And I'm giving you some time. You're going to die anyway. What are you living for? To be slaves? What are you living for? To be able to have a good conversation and to get your nails done and get your hair done and get your fancy little shoes from Italy and your Mercedes Benz from Germany and your BMW from wherever they make that one. And what are you living for? If you're living so that your children and your grandchildren and your great children will be free, then freedom or death would be an appropriate mantra that we should all learn. You can only wear one shoe at a time. You can wear more than one pants, but it'd be too hot in Africa to wear more than one pants. You know? You can only drive one car at a time. I watched the black ball players in America. Here these Negroes coming from poverty in the inner cities of America, and the first thing they do is buy 20 cars, don't even have a driver's license. You know, buy a $10 million house with 50 bathrooms when they can only use one. When there's so many other beautiful ways to invest that money in Africa and America that would change the dynamics overnight of our people. If we show fundamental and basic intelligence about listening to the experience of our ancestors to determine what we do next. I belong to them. I've lived a long time that I didn't think I was going to live, but I've been prepared to die for them most of my life, if that's necessary. You know, and as long as I'm conscious and I can teach and I can tell the truth, you know, then I will try my best to do that. A sister writes from greetings from Namibia. Most white people, specifically females in our country, are so damn racist. Just imagine, once you have a black skin in your own ancestral native land, you are a thief. You a criminal. I mean, how dare they? with the genocide they've committed in Namibia over such a long period of time. But see, when SWAPO had their great victory, SWAPO made the same mistake that South Africa made. Oh, we're going to all sit down together and we're going to be peace together. The German corporate structure that was running Namibia and still running Namibia never had any intentions to have any peace. But all those children that died in the bush and the swamp in SWAPO, where are their spirits today? As our ancestors, what are they saying to us today? Are we listening to them? John, you lost your eye, you lost your hand. You used to be my student at City College. Did you make that sacrifice in SWAPO for the sake of Namibia, to have Namibia still being manipulated by the same people you went to the bush to fight when you fought the South African army and the Americans and others who was trying to maintain the apartheid in Namibia? Malcolm said the secret to life is to have no fear, but we all fear. I have fear, but the secret to life is to try and have no fear or move in spite of your fear. So return to the ways of our ancestors as we look at our history, politically, economically, and culturally. And how do we establish a political construct? That's how you manage your wealth. Your politics manage your wealth. How do we get a hold of the economic wealth that's in our lands so that we can create a polity that can manage it appropriately? And how do we get informed by a culture, a spiritual value system that tell us how to be godly and humane in a manner that we adjust to everyone that is deserving of justice? And I put that in there, deserving of justice. There are some who are not deserving of justice, but they will not allow you to have peace and harmony long enough for you to create a state of justice. So they must be removed out of the way. So South Africa, we got a long way to go, like most of our world. And when I speak African Americans, we're no better off. We commit the same thing that I'm talking about in South Africa. We do it right here in the African American community. We are close to 60 million people, the third or fourth largest African nation in the world. We're one of the wealthiest in terms of cash in hand wealth, nearly $2 trillion to spend a year. And we hardly have a pot to piss in or window to throw it out when it comes to talking about corporate structuring that can employ our people, or having enough entrepreneurial business structure in any given community that we can determine the politics of that community and determine whether our people can find work or not find work. So African America has been a big failure despite all of our great victories. So we need to come back to the table and talk about economic politics and culture and how we control it in the areas we live in. We need to talk about food, clothing, shelter, and safety, and how we can supply it by controlling economic politics and culture. And that means we got to get control of the land where we live, meaning the real estate, the resources where we live, whatever those capital resources are, and then we can influence and control the labor and who get access and opportunity to be a part of labor where we live, whether it's in Johannesburg and Accra and Lagos or New York City. Africans are suffering from the same disease, the love of white people more than they love their own ancestors, the love of the European people more than they love their own ancestors, the love of the culture that has evolved from the murder and genocide of their ancestors more than they love the culture of the ancestors who were murdered and genocide. We suffer from that all over the world. And that informs the political decisions we make, like the one we make in South Africa and the one we make in Washington, D.C. with the Black Caucus. So I don't want to be talking and you say, oh, this Black American, he's talking about Africa and this. No, we Black Africans here in America, America is our geopolitical state, but Africa has always been our race. No one will take that away, whether you live on the continent or off the continent, whether you're African or European or Asian. We will not let you tamper with our Africanity, simply because we live in the house of the devil that somebody sold us into. We appreciate the history, we understand it, but we will fight the demon and the collaborators that come from our own community here in America that fight against the best interests of the African American people. In the same way, we see the best interests, I think, of the South African people, given the history of apartheid. I think the best interest is being compromised with Ramaphosa's decision. And so, you and me, those of us who are looking from the outside, we don't know the poverty, the people who, we may not know the young man, young lady who went to college all those years and can barely eke out a living being a school teacher. We don't know the person who gets on that bus and ride all day or hours to go to work in Johannesburg and hours back home and barely make enough money to put food on the table. Because the wealth in the country is still going out of the country, or it's going in the areas where 90% of the white people live, then 90% of the black people can't even visit. That's a truth. Deal with it. Why does it exist in South Africa till this day? We don't know how to grow grapes and make wine, so we don't have farmland in our hands. We don't know how to raise horses. So someone put up, many of our people don't know of our ancestors because they don't know our history. That's very true, especially, but we must begin to find out by studying history. Start with the basic, your family. What happened to your family, your mother and your father, your grandparents, your great-grandparents? If you go down that road, when you walk backwards, you'll learn what happened to your greater people. Find out what happened to your grandparents. Find out what happened to your great-parents. And find out what happened to their parents. And you'll be well on the way to understanding the history of your people. Find out why somebody from all the way across the Atlantic is running the corporate structures of your country, or somebody from the Middle East or Pakistan or India is running the business district in your Black African country. How did they get there? How did they get this economic? They didn't just come in with a pocket full of money and open business. That's the biggest lie ever told. They were part of the colonial structure, embedded and left in place to manage the infrastructure when the primary colonialist, the European, was forced out during the 60s and 70s. And we were made to think our revolution was over. Our revolution has just begun. Samora Michel was very clear that the day white people praise him, you know that he has betrayed the revolution. They murdered Samora, like they murdered McConnell Brown, like they murdered Patrice Lumumba, like they murdered so many of our great revolutionary men and women. We need to know their name. Who led the revolution in Mozambique? Who led the freedom movement in Malawi? Who led the freedom movement in Tanzania? Who led the freedom movement in Zambia? Who led the freedom movement in Nigeria and Ghana? We need to know these things. We need to know these people, so we can begin to understand who harmed them, who murdered them, who assassinated them, and how they stopped our freedom progress. So we can resume that freedom progress, get control of the economic, politics, and culture that affects our ability to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for ourselves and our family. That's bottom line. We can talk all that other stuff we want to, ideology, politics, but you can do that. But unless you focus on an economic, politics, and cultural control being in your hands, and your ability to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for your people, you're not even having a conversation. You're not even having a conversation. And you can't even get to this conversation unless you turn to learn the history of your ancestors, so you can know who you are doing what you do and why you're doing what you do, being who you are. So here we are. Me and Susan Tata, causing trouble in the world again. They go right outside of Cameroon too. Because we are so
Of
proud.
course,
We are so proud of you, Dr. Thunder. We are proud, proud, proud of you.
we need good trouble.
Mm.
Professor, one last thing. I know you are planning the trip to Ghana. Do you want to say a little bit about it? Because I still had some people that text me and found out if the trip was still open or was still open for registration. So, what is the date? What is the timeline? Can people still join on this trip, or you would say it's already full and the next one? When are you
Well,
leaving? What are the
we
constraints?
yes, ma'am. We're leaving for Ghana from the U.S. We're leaving on the 19th of July, and we are traversing Egypt. I'm particularly not happy about that, but initially we were going to do Egypt and Ghana, but we didn't get a lot of applications for Egypt, so I cut the Egypt portion out. And so we're going to fly to Egypt and change planes and
That's
fly to
correct.
Ghana. And we will get into Ghana on the 20th. And we will be in Ghana until the 2nd, and we will return to the United States on the 3rd. Um, it's going to be a beautiful trip. We're going to look at a lot of museums, a lot of history, a lot of culture. Um, we lost a very powerful ancestor, um, Mother Grace, who is the daughter of Pa Grant, who was one of the leaders of the revolution in Ghana beside Kwame Nkrumah. And so we will be entering the country at the time of her funeral. And so we've been invited to attend that funeral to show our respect to our dear sister who was 100 years old and whose father
Mm.
helped bring the freedom to Ghana, who brought Nkrumah into the freedom movement. Um, and so we will visit the house that they had their first meeting in. And when the British busted them and arrested Nkrumah and the others and put them in jail in a place called Esukado. Some people know it as British Secondary, but we don't want that name. The indigenous name is Esukado. The Ahunta people who speak Afanti in the Western region. So we will be there. And so even though you see my name up here, Professor James Small, I'm legitimately in my spirit Nanan Kofi Mpansa, the second of the Agogo school, which still I've served for 40 years. Um, I'm still wanting to change my name, but the rest of the family had an issue because that's our grandfather and my grand uncle. And we didn't wanted to say, how can you change your name but not lose your connection to them who've been here for 300 years? But I'm Nane Kofi Mpansa. When I go to Ghana, I'm Kofi Mpansa. My beautiful name. And my kingdom is the kingdom of Agogo in the Akopimapo Ashanti area. And I'm from, the Eviana clan. And my clan totem is a dog with a stick in its mouth carrying the fire, showing us the light and showing us the way. So there's a lot of things that you can become culturally that help you know who you are, what you are, and what you got to do. And you are that thing. So in Ghana, we'll also have a beautiful naming ceremony at the palace of the king of Esukado, Nana Kwabena Nketiah V, who is also a scholar, an extraordinary scholar on African culture. And he's finished one book, it's 800 pages on politics and culture in Africa. He's currently finishing his latest book, which I write forward to, which is going to be Chieftaincy, the institution of chieftaincy in Africa. So, yeah, Brother Abdul Ali Muhammad. So the Ghana trip's going to be a beautiful trip, and then we're going to visit some of the museums of Ghana are some of the most extraordinary compilation about culture in the world. So we're going to visit at least 3 museums. One of them is an outdoor museum, which will blow your mind. Which will blow your mind. And we will spend hours walking through this outdoor museum with all the sculptures and the sculpt walls and other things that you will see. And we will spend a little time hanging out with people like my brother Reggie Rockstone at his nightclub, and we will dance, and we will go to the jazz club. It's called, and, with Brother Qantas, and we'll enjoy ourselves with the people, and we'll eat at the local restaurant. And some of us will be courageous enough to eat the indigenous food and enjoy some fufu or some kinky, and some stew fish and have fun. We're going, for many people, this is their first time. And so it's a very spiritual thing anytime you go, but that first trip home, when you have not been home for 500 years, it's hard if you live on the continent to appreciate that. That's something in you know, I've been gone 500 years and I'm back. And when you come, you bring all the dead ones from America with you. They come with you. You brought them back home. You brought them back home so that they're happy, you're happy. So it's more than just a trip, a tour. It's a spiritual pilgrimage. We will go to the slave ports and dungeons where so many of us suffered. We will go to the river where we took our last bath in Ghana before we were put in the slave ports and dungeon, when we were marched from the northern and eastern region of Africa into Ghana. And we'll just enjoy ourselves, learning our history, learning our culture, communing with our people, shopping with our local merchants, and just knowing that we've returned home. Now, most of us will probably never move away from America because this is our home too. We built it with blood, rivers of blood. We built America. We're not going to give it to the Europeans. Never. But he could forget about that one. But many of us will move back home, and many thousands have moved back home in the last few years. And many of us will go back and forth to home, And like me and some of my comrades, we own a business there. We have a hotel called Sun Our Lodge in Cape Coast for 18 years. It's been ups and downs, It's hard to run a business if you're not living in the country. But we managed to stay in business, a 30-room complex, swimming pool, cocktail lounge, and we enjoy that opportunity. We have other friends who come and go with us on this trip who have opened poultry farms in Ghana. When I say poultry farm, I'm talking about thousands of chickens selling eggs every day. We have others who have opened health food business. So a lot of people go and decide, I'm not going back. I've had people go on my trip and say, it's a wrap. And have never been back in America. 20 years plus. And there's some who come back home and go back and forth, and some move over there and move the whole family. So that's good. But we like to see that in any African country. Our next tour, me and Sister Susan is trying to work out the dates, but we will be going to the Cameroon, not in December. If that program may be set for December, we will be looking no later than April. But we'll be putting that Cameroon package together. The thing we have to work on is to make sure we either get there just before the rainy season or just after the rainy season. For me, I like the rainy season. Run around in the mud is cool for me. But some people may not. But we definitely will be in Cameroon between the winter and spring this summer. And the Ghana trip, we've closed out, but if anyone wanted to come in, they could get in touch with me and we would open it back up. I think we have about 39, 40 people going on this pilgrimage. And that's a nice, comfortable family grouping. We have lectures every day on the history and the culture as we move around on the buses. And then I will do some specialty lectures in the evenings when we settle back into our hotel. And we will sit around and have cocktails sometimes, and those who want to have coffee and tea can have coffee and tea. And we'll sit in the lobby of an African-owned hotel. We only stay in African-owned facilities. If the facility is an African-owned, we do not eat there, nor do we stay there. That's part of our policy. And I only take Africans on the tour. Nothing against, because I have some European brothers and sisters who are my friends and comrades. But this tour is so sensitive spiritually that you don't want people getting angry with others on the tour. So I keep it just an African tour because I know what people have to go through spiritually when you walk into Elmina Dungeon for the first time, that something happens to you. And I've learned through 40 years to keep the African people on an African pilgrimage because that's what this is for them, you know. Um, and that's the tour. And there's a bunch of other things that will go on. We'll go to the beach and get our feet in the water a little bit. We'll walk through the marketplaces and be with our people. We'll eat in community restaurants and be with our people. And we'll go to Cocoon Park and we'll walk on the canopy walk above all of the big palm trees. You're 8 stories up in the air looking out from a rope bridge, so it takes a lot of courage. Um, and so that's some of what the tour will be about. We'll also go to the botanical gardens in Aburi, and we'll tour the botanical gardens. We'll go to the herbal gardens and the herbal center where people can buy herbs that they want to if they wish. So that's the trip. I'm getting ready now, cutting off all my pants. It's too long and hemming them so I can have nice shorts without buying new shorts. And I'm getting ready for Ghana for those 14 days. Enjoying.
Professor,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you very much, Professor. Divinely Purpose is actually asking if you would be planning the next trip next year. I don't know when Ghana,
Uh-huh.
Divinely.
Yeah.
But in
Well,
the
we do
meantime, I want to
Ghana.
give out to a shout out. Sir.
We
I
do
want to give
Ghana
out.
every
I
year.
want to give a shout out.
Mhm. Well, let me tell you the date. The Ghana trip every year is always the
Go
last
ahead.
week of July, first week off, every year. But we're going to do, we're in the midst of thinking of a December trip. And there's some forces that want to go to Ghana, some want to go to Tanzania, Ethiopia as a dual. And we are talking about Cameroon. I would rather do Cameroon more in the spring because Cameroon is going to be a big and a special trip, and we need time to do that well. Cameroon have uh, a lot of indigenous culture that we have not even been acquainted with yet. Cameroon have a history of resistance that we haven't even talked about. Cameroon also have the slave dungeon there, where many of our people were brought from the northern sector down to Cameroon before they were shipped into the West. There's so much in Cameroon that Susan is going to help me package that we can show to people as an appeal for coming on the Cameroon tour. You know, I almost was giving it up. This is going to be my last year. Then I met Miss Tata and she go like, no, you got to do these other things. So we're going to do Cameroon and it's going to be a special tour um, because it's a part of the world we don't often go to in large numbers. Yet a lot of our people came from Budagari. A lot of our people came from the Cameroons itself, from that part of Nigeria that borders on the Cameroon. And we have not paid attention to that part of the world. Um, we've been so familiar with the Ghana and the Nigeria because that's been an ebb and flow. But most of us did not come from Nigeria or Ghana and North America. We come from places like the Cameroons. We do come from places like Sierra Leone. A lot of us came from Congo, Angola, and we rarely, because of language, Portuguese and French, we don't have the same interaction with Congo and Angola. And because of language, you know, part of Cameroon is French speaking, part is English speaking. So we don't have that same comradeship. But we're going to break that chain, you know, this spring. And we're going to kick it in Cameroon. I'm going to even go to the farm with Sister Tata with my hoe on my shoulder like I used to do as a child. And we're going to weed the plants and get the weeds out and watch it grow. But
Of course, I
summarize,
think one very important session, Professor James,
yes,
on the
ma'am.
trip to Cameroon, it's really going to be challenging and very interesting because, like you said, most of us actually did not come from the other parts that we're going through. We were only shipped through the outdoors of that.
Right.
One important ministry that would actually be open to receive you, I already know that is the Ministry of Arts and Culture because they have a whole record of all the African descendants, and they've been doing all these lectures like, Oprah Winfrey. They will actually tell you his village, Serena Williams, all these Hollywood superstars, nearly all of them have descendants, their descendants, their ancestry in Cameroon. Because as we would go to the slave village in Bimbia Limbia, you're actually going to see the names, from the countries, the Caribbeans, the African Americans, from which country they actually came, and even some of the family names are also actually being put in place. So you can really trace your origins right to your family names that haven't changed. Because we had an African American sister who came, I think, for the past 5 years in Cameroon and did a real thorough research. She's called Sister Lisa Aubrey. I think most of you know her. And that
Hmm.
research work had to really revamp the door of no return of Cameroon. And we get a lot of people, even our brother Omar Johnson recently was there last year. And Cameroon is actually really interesting. And until also I became conscious and we started doing the research of this to even understand that the origins of the Bantus, which and later on would migrate into the other African countries, actually came from Cameroon. The origins, the first, archaeologists had to find out the first origins of samples of human existence actually started in Bamenda. Yeah. And so the Bantu origins before they migrated to other countries. So I think that's a very important history for us to understand how even our languages played a role, or the role of agriculture and hunting, actually played the role in our history or in our story. And I know, Professor James Small, your great grandmother must have come from Cameroon. Hmm. So we're going to find that out. Professor. I know
I
Pat
forgot
is
what
Sierra
percentage.
Leone, from what I know, but Cameroon.
I've done my DNA with a
But we
couple of these different agencies, and I do have a large, sizable percentage from Cameroon. On one of my great grandmother's side, I'm 100%. She came to the country. I'm my mother is
yeah.
only the second generation born here. My grandmother, her mother was the first generation born here. I'm the third generation born. That's not a long way away because I still knew my great great grandmother
No.
was only 2 years old before my hope died. And they live long. My people always live into the hundreds. I don't know whether I'll do that, but my grandpeople all did that. You know, um, but we know we are from that coastline and from that area. Um, we've always had a resistance. I don't know an element of my family that wasn't a part of resistance. None. All my great people were resistors. I mean, political resistors. Over here, cultural resistors. My mom and my father, and my big brothers and my sisters who protected me. I would not be doing any of the things I do except that they protected me and covered on me. And they should no one, my brother'd be in California, and if he smelt the threat towards his little brother, he'd be on a plane over here with his people to make sure people understand in New York, that's an untouchable. You touch him, you touch a whole family of crazy people. And we will come for you. Crazy people will come for you.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
we're
you,
looking
people.
so forward to Cameroon and opening Cameroon
Yes.
up to our people. Like I said, we are talking close to just in North America, some 60 plus million people. And then we're talking to the Caribbean, we almost doubled that number that needs to begin to return to the Cameroon and the other states that we don't normally go to along the West Coast. Um, not just to look for a specific family, because I really don't care about the specific families, because that's not realistic, really. Nor was it that relevant. I'm an African. That's relevant. You understand? That's what's realistic. Because no family in Cameroon today was in Cameroon 5,000 years ago. They came from someplace. No family in South Africa today was there except for a few, maybe the Khoisan that was there 5,000 years ago. We've been moving around that continent for millions of years. We're one Africa.
Absolute.
No matter what ethnic nation we're from, those are ethnic nations. We are one African family that had its genesis with one African woman. And that one African woman, which was the first time the universe manifested itself as a human being, gave birth to anything and everything else, period. You want to look up the anthropology and the, what do you call it, all the other ology details, you can do that. But you can't get around the fact that this all started with one African woman, and it started with the universe making itself one African woman, and the rest of us are her children. Period. We're African. That's right. We are African. Period. But it's good to go back to the different parts of the family settlements because, see, when we left Africa, there was no
Oh,
Cameroon. You know, there was no Cameroon. There was no Ghana. There was no Nigeria. There was
yes.
none of those places. That's the gift of a deadly gift of the Berlin Conference of 1884-85. Okay, we were Africans moving about as necessity dictated to feed our cows and our goats and our sheep to run our farms. Or if we fell in love with some woman across the street, down the road, around the corner, in the bush, we left home to go marry there. Or she left home to come marry here. So we're going back home. But that part of home called Cameroon has spun a lot of unique things, culturally, spiritually, philosophically, ideologically, that we need to share in that experience, both the ancient one and the resistant movements against the French and the British. We need to know those things. So that's why we're coming. It's called Love Yourself. If you love yourself, you must love Africa. If you love Africa, you can love yourself. If you love Africa, then you will fight for the freedom of Africa until this life has no more fight to do. That's what it's about. Bottom line, freedom or death. It's not a cliche. It should be a habit. It should be the behavior of the human being. And that's why I have all those little
Wonderful.
people. They hang out with me everywhere I go, everything I do. These are
I
the
see.
images
Everybody can see that.
that they are powerful thoughts
Wow.
and ideas that governs my mind. I know my screen froze down. So we're gonna go, well, that's good. They're frozen the right thing in place.
He's gonna live long, as long
Oh yeah.
as you won.
Yeah. Those are the symbols
Thank
of the
you.
thoughts
Thank you,
of the
Professor.
spirit of the ancestors. Oh, thank you, sister. They've frozen it, but it's good. They're frozen in place. The most powerful symbol of my mind. My Shango, my Oya, my elders, my Ogun, you know, and from Cote d'Ivoire, you know, I've got my beautiful sculptors, and I've got my great spirit, Malcolm, who's eternal, looking at you. I'm looking at you too, brother Malcolm.
Visited. How are the Leonards Jeffersons doing? Jeffries.
They're doing fine, Dr. Jeffries and Sister
Professor
Jeffries.
James.
They just gave a lecture. I think first they were just at the UN last week to a program um, on Africa, and the week before, on the 8th, they gave a lecture up at Essex State College in New Jersey. And the week before, they were someplace else at a function in New York. So They're doing very well, both of them. And on May 19th, they were with me at the gravesite of Malcolm X. And both of them look very strong and very well
Okay,
for their age. And Dr. Jeffrey's health
wonderful,
improved 100%.
wonderful. Can you adjust your camera? Can I miss your face?
It won't let me. It has frozen.
Ah, it is frozen. I see.
Yeah.
Anyways, but we can hear you. Yes. And we
So,
appreciate your time, Professor. It's almost 2 hours on this conversation. I think no, 2.5 hours here. We truly appreciate you. We know it's been a while that we didn't have such deep and concrete insight lectures from you. So we truly, really appreciate you. I mean, to come back and just water our hearts, which were yearning and burning because of the situation of, like you said, little fears that keep lingering around us each time and shaking us to stay strong and loyal to our mother continent and to ourselves. So I really want to thank you. I don't think anything is left out untouched on the topic of South Africa. Nothing is also is left untouched or unanswered. Questions that you all had in your minds. I think everybody is quite satisfied that we could have Professor James here to bless us again with another classical exclusive lectures. So I want to thank all of you that were watching, and I saw a lot of people watching, from Cameroon and elsewhere for the first time. If you're still watching me actually from the continent or in the diaspora, I want to give a shout out to you and to actually appreciate your time for being here. And if you're here for the first time and don't want to ever miss such a deep insider knowledge from our ancestors, from our professors, from our scholars, knowledge of our African spirituality, our political, economic, cultural, social, updates and about the Africa we want, please join us every day on Pan African Daily TV. But what you need to do is because we don't have time to actually like post every time. The simple thing would be for you to just subscribe. If you click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and more precisely, you click the notification, it's just a yellow bell that is attached to subscribe. And so you get a notification instantly when I go live or when we have, really professional lectures. Sometimes we just gather here and just have fun and have a great time among ourselves. And that's also part of the essence of this program, which we connect, get to know each other, and also build the energy of one Africa for the liberation of the Africans by the Africans. And so in the past days, we were just touching, and introducing ourselves to Agenda 2063 of the Africa Union, right? And that's what I call is the spiritual Bible of the African child, anywhere in the world, or the elders, in the new renaissance of the Africa, because everything that we want is in that Agenda 2063. And we can already see a lot of emergence, or the emergence of the part of that agenda that is put in the first 10 years plan. So even in my country, Cameroon, I see a lot of things going on, but these are things I never saw or never thought. So sometimes we see development with a poverty mindset, but when we are really conscious and we follow these daily upgrades and updates about the continent and how it's feathering and its people worldwide, I think we really come closer. We feel Africa differently. It's not just the Africa that somebody is going to compose and tell us, but it's Africa for us and by us and with us. Okay. And so I truly appreciate all of you that are constantly following Pan African Daily TV. Your moral support is so uplifting. I cannot say that many times again here. I cannot say that. It's been that all and all and all again. So I see most of our great scholars and professors and researchers and even authors are going to be coming live with us as we settle down minute by minute to put the studio set up in Cameroon. And I cannot wait, like Professor James is saying, to host you in Cameroon. And I think it's really like spatial. Like I say, we know ourselves. The fact that you know me and I know you, you can imagine. The fact that we all are vibrating on the same frequency makes a lot of sense why we should begin to explore Cameroon as well. Just like Ghana now is actually having the diasporas, you go, they have a whole village for themselves. Why not? We're also lobbying when the Cameroon government and the natives and our traditional rulers begin to see us come back, they will start figuring out a way to give us land to be able also to develop our own diaspora village. So that is what we all agreed upon, and that's the reason why I'm here. Thank you very much, Divine Purposely, for appreciating. I also appreciate you. I'm only here because we are here, isn't it? I'm here because we're here, all of us together. So I thank you. And I thank you for continuing to follow us. And please make sure you share whenever we come live. If you haven't subscribed, just do so. That's just the easiest thing to do. And one more thing, like I told you, we are not here like YouTubers and content creators, to make money on YouTube and to do that. No, we are for the total liberation of the African by the African. Our spirituality counts a lot. And what is that spirituality? Is our unity and our connectivity, our connections. We have made a lot of big forward steps by knowing each other personally and also spiritually. I cannot imagine how much I've enhanced my horizon of the African family on the global space just by us sitting here and having these conversations, okay? And nobody is here that knows more than everybody. That's what I love about the Pan African Daily, and I love us because it's a whole family that has a different kind of a spirit that is not experienced anywhere until you're part of this community. Like we don't do political debates, like we don't, come to teach I know all. Like we just listen and upgrade ourselves. And if we disagree or we don't know something, we personally or generally just go on a research. I don't know any modern way of people developing or systems developing without actually being part of this. So I want to thank Professor Baina Bello, who is also, my mentor, spatial mentor, Mama Bello, to all of us here. And yeah, actually, in the chat with us has been since Professor James was on. And as Novia, I want to thank you to Cheryl. Thank you so much. Marcia, I cannot really. WS Banker, I want to thank all of you for always being here every day. I look forward to a conversation tomorrow, but please, actually, I want to lay hands on Tony Jaja, our peace ambassador and correspondent for Eastern Horn of Africa. I hope I'll be able to lay hands on him. If Professor James doesn't come here or doesn't make it before the Ghana trip, please, I'll be upgrading and updating you on the process of the Ghana tours. I personally, Pan African Daily TV is going to cover up that tours, like we said in July, so we just don't want to miss a part of it. And also looking forward, like you said, if not in December or next year, to be on the road to host you. There's just a lot of things that we would discover, okay? Knowing ourselves again or reconnecting back to ancestors. But the one last thing I wanted to say is the people in the Caribbean are the ones that are actually really famous here in Cameroon. Like, we have Mama Odele, I call her Mafo, who has always been putting a delegation since way back, and they always came to West Cameroon in the Western Province, where they already met with chiefs a lot, and some of them also went to the southern part of Cameroon in the southwest, where they met with the indigenous chiefs, and they are already so connected. Most of them already had their reinitiation bath. They had their Cameroonian names. And so Cameroon is not left out from this story of the returnees. It's just that they've never been a platform like Pan African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata that has been actually watering this. And so Cameroon was kind of locked in the dark as just a French speaking country. But like Prof said, we are not French, we are not English, we are Africans. And that's what matters to us. So I want to thank you. Prof, can you hear me? I
Yes,
know your
ma'am.
camera
Can you hear
froze.
me?
Oh, wow. Oh,
Can you
wow. I
can you
was
hear me?
just rambling and sitting in your space. Can you round up? Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Can you round up and give us a closing remark for today?
Mm-hmm. That's a photograph of me and my oldest granddaughter. So I always make sure that any picture I
Oh,
have is of me and my Kristen. And so today was
she's so
about
beautiful.
really wondering why we make certain political decisions in the governments that we are heading in Africa, and we focus on South Africa because a big political decision was made between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, rather than with some of the other African organizations that would have been seemingly would have made more sense to bring what I would have thought a greater unity, you know. But unfortunately, that's not what was given the strength by the people in the ANC. And so instead of going with ESS or IFP, they went with the DA. We hope that that would come with a legitimate partnership because the Democratic Alliance do represent the majority of the white community of South Africa and the majority of the community that
Mm,
control the land and the wealth. So we are hoping that some legitimate relationship would come where we could see the return or redistribution of some of the land to the indigenous people so that they can farm and get the wealth from their property. And some of the wealth from the mines can be returned to be owned by the government of South Africa so that they would have the resources to develop the infrastructure of the country, the school system, the hospital system, the sewage system, the water system, the electrical grids, and so forth. You can't do those things without capital. And you can't have capital without being in control of some aspect of the natural resources. Now, is Ramaphosa making a deal that would include some of these things? We're hoping, but given the history, I doubt it. Um, but I will say what Mama Bello said yesterday. We're not going to cry over spilled milk. We're going to build and we're going to organize. So if the ESS is really serious, then let's organize. Let's go door to door across the entire South Africa. All right. Let's go to people with solutions on
yes.
how to organize at the most local level. Because a lot of our problem is disorganization at the local level. And that we need to move away from what is called, I don't even like the
Yes.
word xenophobia. We need to move away from anti African philosophy that have developed under the ANC, where we're trying to fight against our brothers that are coming to South Africa to look for work. At the same time, we're not fighting against the Indian or the whites who come to South Africa looking for work. So our own self-hating, anti-African attitude needs to change, and maybe the government needs to take a role in that more than just a message in a speech once a year. You know, and again, to the ESS, let's organize. If you really believe you have the right pathway, let's take it to the people, organize the people where they are around the needs and aspirations that they have. In the next election, you will win. But it's got to be more than a conversation.
Yes.
And I'm just happy, Dr. Susan, for the opportunity to be back with you and to see you in Cameroon. I followed you by the photographs you sent me. I've seen you go to the farm. I've seen you work on the farm. I've seen you rushing to get a transport to go to the capital. You know, I've seen you with your mom, with your sister, and the joy in your face, going back home and getting reacculturated in the way you have to if you're going to do the big job that's in front of you, using this media and this medium to help our people worldwide. You know? And I think Cameroon is as good a base as one could possibly have to do this work. And it'll only grow. And we'll get the better grasp of the technology. So I'm not concerned about that. Um, we are the power that we want to make ourselves into. And we never give up. We never stop fighting. You know, there's always freedom or death. So peace and blessings, everyone. Peace and blessings, the Pan African Daily TV family. We love you much. Stay strong. And I see our brothers and sisters from Jamaica is glad for this medium to teach us and encourage us of who we really are. One Africa. Absolutely, no question. We need no other explanation. We can be the ADOS or the DDOS or even African American is a limited definition because it's talking about our geopolitical place of America and our race of Africa. When someone asks, who are you? I'm an African. If they want to try to get more and say, well, where you from, then you can deal with these other locations. But who am I? I'm an African. Period. Where are you from in Africa? It doesn't matter because we're from everywhere now. And when we came here, we came from all over and we married one another and we had sex with one another and we brought all of the gene pools of Africa together into one Africa. And that's who we are, Africans. So thank you, Madam Tata.
Absolutely.
So very much.
Thank
What
you
are
so
you
much,
laughing
my
at?
professor.
I gotta
Thank you, my
ask.
beloved. We'll be seeing us soon in Ghana. And apart from that, I'll be updating in anything, if anything would change. I'll let
Yes,
you know.
and we'll be in touch on Ghana. If you got the time and space, so I can see how I have to assist you. If you've got the time, then I will make some space. I do have some
I
powers
have
and
the,
some.
I have the time. What is my business in the world? I already told you my agenda. My business is
Okay,
just what
so
I have
let's
to do for my people.
let's talk. Let's talk next week so we can get hotel line up appropriately and your flight over there appropriately. So we'll talk next
Okay.
week. All right, my sister.
Thank you.
So peace and blessings
Thank
to
you,
all the
Professor.
brothers around the world. I wish them happy Father's Day. Don't just accept it as a label. Fulfill your role as the father in the family, but as a father in the African world. Our role is to defend our nation, protect our nation through the defense and protection of our families. So peace and blessings to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Wow. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, my beloved. Thank you, my great, great world family. And again, oh my God, happy Father's Day. What would we be without fathers? And happy Father's Day on the behalf of our children means to, and for us women, happy husbands, our fathers. Um, we once were husbands. We once husbands to other people and fathers to other nation. So we really love you. We appreciate you, African King. You know that. You know that we will do everything to stand behind you at every time, at every moment, because we know you're the father of the nations, just like we are the mother of the nations. And we know all the fathers are the carriers of our ancestral genes. So we salute you, we respect you, we welcome you, and we appreciate you, okay? So yes, one last before I go, Professor Baina Bello is actually taking up some time to come and be with us tomorrow. It's still going to be really on a note for us, like she said, no giving up. We have to stand strong and look forward for the battle, look forward towards success. And so there's nothing like anybody is giving up anytime soon. So please welcome with me Professor Baina Bello, Mama, the Queen Mother of Haiti, tomorrow live on the Pan African Daily TV. Same time. When I say same time, that's 7 p.m. Cameroon and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard. And I mean, of course, we just know. But like I said, if you're just subscribed or put on your notification bells, like any other person has done, you won't need us to repeat the times to you. So when we're live, you just understand. So I wish you all a happy evening and enjoy all our fathers and that are taking their mothers out and their daughters out, for such a celebration. Like Prof said, we do it every day anyway. We just kind of like, some people need to hear also that we appreciate them. So I want to thank you, and we see ourselves tomorrow with Professor Baina on the same way. What is the way forward to you Africans? Are you just going to fall back or you're going to stay? So thank you so much, and we see us tomorrow. Good night. Bye-bye. I love you all. Tuko pamoja na tondiwa miaka berry. Bye. Madasa. Like I say, we're going to be saying Madasa in Ghana. So bye and good night to all of you. Bye-bye. You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.